I'm Olivia, and I like to do things that are fun and borderline. So that's very shy.
It's good. It's good. My name's Kate, and I like to do illustration work, and then I like to organize and put on events and things like that. So.
I'm Holly, and I like to make illustrations and other things that not sure yet. I know.
Cool. I like to do things with my and I have curated a selection of short films and that I wanted to share with you guys and your thoughts as people who are designers. Yeah, to talk about like our role as designers in a world that's becoming more and more aware of environment. The first film that I'm gonna move this table because I feel like we're too far away.
Do you need help?
We could be too far away, right? We could do the
And then we'll just have. Okay.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay. You're on
Yeah,
call.
I'm ready to talk with you.
You're very like on
Yeah.
call, ready to go.
Okay. All the story stuff. Have you guys seen this? I have. You have? Cool.
I am not.
You're only gonna watch about half of it. You're gonna watch a few minutes of it. It's pretty long. The first part is about like natural resources and where stuff comes from as far as natural resources. And the most important part that I feel like I connect with being a design student is the part about consumption and cultures around consumption, which is going to start in the next 30-ish minutes.
The natural resource base. These people pay for the loss of their clean air, the increase in asthma and cancer rates. The kids in the Congo pay with their future. 30% of the kids in part of the Congo have dropped out of school to mine coltan, a metal we need for our cheap and disposable electronics. These people even pay by having to cover their own health insurance. All along this system, people pitched in so I could get this radio for $4.99, and none of these contributions are recorded in any accounts book. That's what I mean by the company owners externalize the true cost of production. And that brings us to the golden arrow of consumption. This is the heart of the system, the engine that drives it. It is so important that protecting this arrow has become the top priority for both of these guys. That's why after 9/11, when our country was in shock, and President Bush could have suggested any number of appropriate things, to grieve, to pray, to hope. No, he said to shop, to shop. We have become a nation of consumers. Our primary identity has become that of being consumers, not mothers, teachers, farmers, but consumers. The primary way that our value is measured and demonstrated is by how much we contribute to this arrow, how much we consume. And do we? We shop and shop and shop, keep the materials flowing, and flow they do. Guess what percentage of total materials flow through this system is still in product or use 6 months after the date of sale in North America? 50%? 20? No, 1%. 1. In other words, 99% of the stuff we harvest, mine, process, transport, 99% of the stuff we run through the system is trashed within 6 months. Now, how can we run a planet with that level of materials throughput? It wasn't always like this. The average US person now consumes twice as much as they did 50 years ago. Ask your grandma. In her day, stewardship and resourcefulness and thrift were valued. So how did this happen? Well, it didn't just happen. It was designed. Shortly after World War II, these guys were figuring out how to ramp up the economy. Retailing analyst Victor Lebeau articulated the solution that's become the norm for the whole system. He said, our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever-accelerating rate. President Eisenhower's Council of Economic Advisors chairman said that the American economy's ultimate purpose is to produce more consumer goods. More consumer goods? Our ultimate purpose? Not provide healthcare or education or safe transportation or sustainability or justice? Consumer goods? How did they get us to jump on board this program so enthusiastically? Well, two of their most effective strategies are planned obsolescence and perceived obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is another word for designed for the dump. It means they actually make stuff to be useless as quickly as possible, so we'll chuck it and buy a new one. It's obvious with things like plastic bags and coffee cups, but now it's even big stuff. Mops, DVDs, cameras, barbecues, even everything. Even computers. Have you noticed that when you buy a computer now, the technology is changing so fast that in just a couple of years, it's actually an impediment to communication? I was curious about this, so I opened up a big desktop computer to see what was inside. And I found out that the piece that changes each year is just a tiny little piece in the corner. But you can't just change that one piece because each new version is a different shape. So you've got to chuck the whole thing and buy a new one. So I was reading industrial design journals from the 1950s when planned obsolescence was really catching on. These designers are so open about it. They actually discuss how fast can they make stuff break that still leaves the consumer have enough faith in the product to go out and buy another one. It was so intentional. But stuff cannot break fast enough to keep this arrow afloat. So there's also perceived obsolescence. Now, perceived obsolescence convinces us to throw away stuff that is still perfectly useful. How do they do that? Well, they change the way the stuff looks. So if you bought your stuff a couple of years ago, everyone can tell that you haven't contributed to this arrow recently. And since the way we demonstrate our value is contributing to this arrow, it can be embarrassing. Like, I've had the same fat white computer monitor on my desk for 5 years. My coworker just got a new computer. She has a flat, shiny, sleek monitor. It matches her computer, it matches her phone, even her pen stand. She looks like she's driving in Spaceship Central, and I look like I'm on a washing machine on my desk. Fashion is another prime example of this. Have you ever wondered why women's shoe heels go from fat one year to skinny the next to fat to skinny? It's not because there's some debate about which heel structure is the most healthy for women's feet. It's because wearing fat heels in a skinny heel year shows everybody that you haven't contributed to that arrow as recently, so you're not as valuable as that person in skinny heels next to you, or more likely in some ad. It's to keep us buying new shoes. Advertisements and media in general plays a big role in this. Each of us in the U.S. is targeted with over 3,000 advertisements a day. We see more advertisements in 1 year than people 50 years ago saw in a lifetime. And if you think about it, what's the point of an ad except to make us unhappy with what we have? So 3,000 times a day, we're told our hair is wrong, our skin is wrong, our clothes are wrong, our furniture is wrong, our car is wrong, and we are wrong, but it can all be made right if we just go shopping. Media also helps by hiding all of this and all of this. So the only part of the materials economy we see is the shopping. The extraction, production, and disposal all happens outside of our field of vision. So in the US, we have more stuff than ever before, but polls show that our national happiness is actually declining. Our national happiness peaked in the 1950s, the same time that this consumption mania exploded. Interesting coincidence. I think I know why. We have more stuff, but we have less time for the things that really make us happy. Friends, family, leisure time. We're working harder than ever. Some analysts say we have less leisure time than any time since feudal society. And do you know what the two main activities are that we do with the scant leisure time we have? Watch TV and shop. In the US, we spend 3 to 4 times as many hours shopping as our counterparts in Europe do. So we're in this ridiculous situation where we go to work, maybe 2 jobs even, and we come home and we're exhausted, so we plop down on our new couch and watch TV, and the commercials tell us you suck, so you gotta go to the mall to buy things to feel better, and then you gotta go to work more to pay for the stuff you just bought, so you come home and you're more tired, so you sit down and you watch more TV until you go to the mall again, and we're on this crazy work, watch, spend treadmill, and we could just stop. So in the end, what happens to all this stuff we buy anyway? At this rate of consumption, it can't fit into our houses, even though the average house size has doubled in this country since the 1970s. It all goes out in the garbage. And that brings us to disposal. This is the part of the materials economy we all know the most because we have to haul the junk out to the curb ourselves. Each of us in the United States makes 4.5 pounds of garbage a day. That's twice what we each made 30 years ago. All of this garbage either gets dumped in a landfill, which is just a big hole in the ground, or if you're really unlucky, first it's burned in an incinerator and then dumped in the landfill. Either way, they both pollute the air, land, water, and don't forget, change the climate. Incineration is really bad. Remember those toxics back in the production stage? Well, burning the garbage releases the toxics up into the air. Even worse, it makes new super toxics, like dioxin. Dioxin is the most toxic man-made substance known to science, and incinerators are the #1 source of dioxin. That means that we could stop the #1 source of the most toxic man-made substance known just by stopping burning the trash. We could stop it today. Now, some companies don't want to deal with building landfills and incinerators here, so they just export the disposal too. What about recycling? Does recycling help? Yes, recycling helps. Recycling reduces the garbage at this end, and it reduces the pressure to mine and harvest new stuff at this end. Yes, 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 we should all recycle, but recycling is not enough. Recycling will never be enough for a couple reasons. First, the waste coming out of our houses is just the tip of the iceberg. For every 1 garbage can of waste you put out on the curb, 70 garbage cans of waste were made upstream just to make the junk in that 1 garbage can you put out on the curb. So even if we could recycle 100% of the waste coming out of our households, it doesn't get to the core of the problems. Also, much of the garbage can't be recycled, either because it contains too many toxics or it's designed not to be recyclable in the first place. Like those juice packs, where they have layers of metal and paper and plastic all smushed together. You can never separate those for true recycling. So you see, it is a system in crisis. All along the way, we are bumping up against limits. From changing climate to declining happiness, it's just not working. But the good thing about such an all-pervasive problem is that there are so many points of intervention. There are people working here on saving forests, and here on clean production, people working on labor rights and fair trade and conscious consuming and blocking landfills and incinerators, and very importantly, on taking back our government so that it really is by the people and for the people. All of this work is critically important, but things are really going to start moving when we see the connections, when we see the big picture. When people along the system get united, we can reclaim and transform this linear system into something new, a system that doesn't waste resources or people.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like that was a lot of information, and I didn't really practice it very much. But it kind of encapsulates a lot of the stuff that I've been thinking about with regards to like producing and like being creative.
And I think even, since that was in 2007, that was before I feel like really a lot of the internet as we know it, like even existed. I mean, it existed, but it's like a lot of the Web 2.0 and all of that stuff. Like, I feel like them watching the TV, like, I'm wondering, like what else, as far as like the images that we consume, the different weird distractions, is like in 2007, you didn't have your phone shooting notifications at you all the time. You didn't have alarms going. Like, it's just, I feel like our focus is way more fractured too. But I'm wondering how that like an updated version of that, even though that was only 2007.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. It's like when it talks about TV.
Yeah, like
some of these problems are still real, but
yeah.
like the way that we are consuming information is really different, and we have a much more curated selection of like what we see. So like as far as like just having ads thrown at you for like everything,
yeah,
I would get that.
I find it way easier to find things that I want to purchase because of the internet now versus versus like going and seeing like a commercial on TV that I was like, well, that's not really targeted to me, but like, oh hey, look, this Pinterest board I put together of everything I've ever wanted, and I can get it through Amazon Prime.
But you didn't even know you wanted it.
And I didn't even know I wanted it, and now they're telling me that after I just purchased this, these are 4 more other things that I want too, because of the way that the internet's like the whatever the analytics that Amazon has figured out based on my buying habits too. Like, you like this book, then you'll like 10 more of these books, and you're like, great, I do love those books too.
One time, I was on Amazon looking up a $10 bag of Lucky Charms marshmallows. And then it suggested to me like a full leather bodysuit. Because it even said that you looked at Lucky Charms marshmallows, you may be interested in full leather bodysuit.
Based on
People
previous
bought this.
ones. Yeah,
Also
exactly.
bought this.
Exactly.
I feel like one thing that this film made me think about is this idea that like when I was a freshman here, or like sophomore when I was first in this program, I had a professor just like offhandedly say like, oh, graphic design is inherently like we're terrible for the environment. Like you can't be an environmentalist and be a graphic designer. Just not possible. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna internalize that and not talk about it to anyone for a long time.
That's a broad sweeping generalization from that. I'm assuming that wasn't one of your graphic design professors.
It was Rory.
Oh, funny.
Favorite professor.
Rory loves to like
Yeah.
to sweeping.
This is the way things
sweeping.
are.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that professor.
You should have asked him what that meant. Like what he meant by that. Because that I feel like he would have had a really good reasoning for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since he's a graphic designer, he participates. Yeah. And so I'd be so curious as to that phrase that Rory.
Totally. And it's like I'm glad he said it because it was spurring me this whole thing. You know, but let me see what you guys think about that. You know.
We just had a speaker in our class last week who does a lot of like environmental design, and one of the things he did was just take windows, like things like, yeah, it really sucks, but we'll just kind of throw that thing away after we're done. And it was like this 10-foot round thing. I was like, I wonder, like, is there a way that you can design things where you get complete data really different things, or is there like a company that they could sell that to that then you in this community? Like, what is the biggest issue?
Yeah, it's a good question. It like makes me think a lot about like the future of like sustainability and like getting people to think seriously about that is like really centered around design. Like how do you design foods that don't have plastic? That's like what does that look like? What do graphic designers make in the future where you can't cut down trees anymore? You know, I feel like that's like the way that the future looks is like super centered in environmental, like not environmental science in space, but environmental science in design.
I think it's also too how someone wants to define what a graphic designer does too, because I think it's also kind of a narrow definition to say that graphic designers only make stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely not the case. There's so many different areas that you can go into with your graphic design skills that doesn't equal you making products. I mean, that's strategy, organization, communication, implementation. Like I feel like there's packaging designers, there's object-based designers, things like that, but then there's all these others. So that's why I'm still thinking about Rory's statement. I'm basically arguing for Rory designer. What did Rory say? Rory said that you can't be you can't be an environmentalist and be a graphic designer.
And I like deeply internalized it.
Well, you deeply what?
Internalized it.
Oh yeah, interaction design, like Well, but there's still the new thing with the devices, like all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Jason's watching this.
I liked what Austin.
What's up, Rory? He's texting me. Jason Sturgill.
I'm not like I've been thinking about stuff a lot and like making stuff. Kind of like being a designer and an artist who like makes crafts and uses paper. And there's another next thing that I wanted to show here is a little clip from a film that I put out a couple years ago called Born's Warware.
No, I haven't. Oh, Jason just said hi to everyone.
I'm gonna watch like the first minute and then I'm gonna skip to like 4 minutes. Like it's definitely on video, like a random story video, as you can see at the beginning. But the message that it has is really.
I mean, Patagonia is like one of those companies that.
Yeah.
Their brand stories. There's a good documentary about them on Netflix too.
I know a lot of like.
Well, and I think that's also another thing that's changed since 2007. Right? Yeah, like Clinton too, where there's just more awareness and all that. The bottom. I don't know. Hey, Max, you know how that you can get rid of that on the bottom?
Max is
Yo. That's so weird.
Of course, like every other teenage kid, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I think when I was 16 years old, I took off and drove across the country to Wyoming. Went into the Wind River Range and discovered mountains. I never wanted to be a businessman. All I wanted to do was do my craft and climb mountains. I had to figure out a way to where I was going to be a businessman, but I was going to do it completely on my own terms.
And everything is designed starting with a functional need. Our first clothing products were made overly tough. You know, what do a bunch of blacksmiths know about sewing anyway?
But it tells a story.
Like the Appalachian Trail. And the hat has come with me on every single long distance hike that I've done. The longer I keep the piece of gear, the more stories it accumulates and the more memories. I definitely do notice when other people are wearing Patagonia gear, and when I see that it's older and beat up, I kind of think, oh, there's a kindred spirit.
Across North America a bunch of times. South America, Bolivia, bicycled from the Andes above La Paz down to the upper Amazon. It's been to Ireland, yeah, it's been Australia, Hawaii. We've cycled the Big Island 3 or 4 times. My name is Jim Brady. I'm a teacher and I take kids on trips, and I've had this jacket for 15 years. I could have gotten rid of this a long time ago, but it tells a story. Every time I put it on and shake the sand out of it maybe, or dry it off if I've been in the rain, it tells me a story. And I can look at it and remember, and I get to tell other people stories off that too. The blue paint, we painted a bench, and it's out in the garden now. The old tape here, the upholstery tape, got a little snag and some barbed wire. I think this one is when I went over the handlebars to celebrate my 60th birthday 2 years ago, but I had a big crash. Having stuff with legitimate wear and tear, I think that reflects what I'm trying to do. I don't need to buy something. As an educator, when I work with my students, we talk a lot about resources, and I can talk all day, but I think I just sort of try to teach by example. clothing, believe it or not, reflects that. All colors are a statement. When I wear this, part of the message is, man, you can keep this stuff for a long time. It's made well, lasts a long time with good working conditions. If that's where sustainability is going, that's good.
Two cute dogs.
We can't be a society that's based on consuming and discarding endlessly. What we're trying to do is make clothes that can be handed down, that'll last forever.
So we're just finishing up the sap season in New Hampshire. We probably did the last boil last night. So 2 nights ago, my husband went out and collected the sap, and then we drive it down to the sap house that's right here on the property, and boil it down. And it takes about 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. I think everybody really likes it when the sap's just coming out of the finishing tank. The boil that we just completed was really dark and flavorful, and it's fun for them to taste it and see the differences. My name's Lissa Chapin. I live in Kentucky, New Hampshire with my 4 kids. Will's almost 8, Merrick's 6, Leah is 4, Sam's 2. So we've got this neat pair of old blue Patagonia bibs that are baby size. We got them in a box of hand-me-downs and just immediately loved them. The bibs have been through all of my kids. They started with my nephew, and then they went.
It's just
You know, one of my favorite quotes
continuing film about
is from
people in their clothes.
Henry David Thoreau. Beware of any endeavor that requires new clothes.
Got an old blue shirt and it suits me just fine. Like the way it feels.
Much in silence.
Actually, I have this. That coat is Patagonia, and there's a tag on the inside, and it says like repair, reuse, recycle this product. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But then it also got me thinking a little bit about like the textile industry. I was like, China. So is it just like a marketing thing? Like, oh yeah, you know, repair this garment, and we're like it's like greenwashing.
There's something though that I feel like with Patagonia though that I think there's a lot of companies that do greenwash. I think there's a lot of companies in Portland that do that all the time.
Yeah.
But it's either I actually like sincerely believe. I don't know if it's because of they've been around for so long. Like I don't know, like just I
They just keep saying it.
yeah, they keep saying that. And Jason just texted. Jason says they also sell used gear at Patagonia too.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also wanted to point out just one thing is that you can be a designer communicating the message. This message selling only ideas. Ideas are free and don't use fossil fuels.
Thank you, Jason.
But that just kind of ties on to like what I had said earlier too, where it's like you can there's so many different ways that you can be a designer.
Totally.
You don't have to make it stop. But I think it's also important too, like even so much about design is also educating the client too. And I think whether you're working for a large scale firm or whether you are a scrappy independent, have your own business, is like it's like you can be educating your clients about paper choices, about ink choices, about just being really well versed on the smart ways if you are going to be printing business cards, if you are going to be making things the best way to be doing it, and really selling them on that idea that it's worth it to spend a little bit more money probably to make that happen, or to kind of like if they want all these like kind of like crappy deliverables to suggest in such a way that you get some other ideas instead.
I feel like sometimes maybe part of the reason why companies don't do that, or something that's deterrent about that, and it's really unfortunate, but is that it almost makes it part of your brand's identity, and sometimes in too prominent a way. Like, you know, all of a sudden, if you use recycled paper or something, now you're like an eco company that uses recycled paper, and like, you know, or you feel like, or they feel like they have to say that they use recycled, you know, and it becomes part of their brand, or maybe that's not really what they need to or want to project. I don't know.
No, that's a good point. I feel like that happened quite a bit several years ago when, where it was just like, all recycled paper was brown, and like it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't have to do that or show it.
Yeah.
Or have that, like, yell it to everyone, like, we're eco-friendly paper, for it to be used and anything like that. Right.
And I think maybe I'm being a Pollyanna about this, but I feel like it's getting to be more of the norm.
Yeah.
To at least over the last, and it also could be this that we're also living in Portland too. But I felt like when I lived in Mississippi, like it was way more of a radical thing to want to like talk to the printer and be like, hey, do we have any alternative paper stock to this? Like, I don't know, it just
there's the option too, like swings.
Yeah.
I think most companies are stocking more variety because the consumer and the people who are trying to have things created are more into so like they trickle down.
But I mean, it's like, I feel like those are like small things that we can do, but the whole case of planned obsolescence of technology, like I just feel like that just exhausts me to think about that. I don't know what we can do about that, because I feel like we use those machines, like we that and yeah, a new iPhone comes out and you have a new cord that you have to use, so the other cord doesn't work, and it's just it's like I feel like that fight is a lot. It's definitely more of a bigger and more abstract problem that I don't really know what I can do about that, because I guess I could use a flip phone. I don't want to. I guess I could use like this old laptop for a really long time, but I need it to go fast. I know.
Yeah, so in order to do the kind of work that you do or that you do,
Yeah.
you need it.
Yeah.
So it's like definitely like systematic problems.
And it's like Apple, like they're not. I mean, I wish that they would be like, hey, we're a new thing is coming out, and here's the eco-friendly way. You can buy this chip and it'll make your computer faster. Or hey, we're not going to change our charger.
But even things like where it's unplanned.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I still have a cassette Walkman and it works.
Yeah.
Why don't I use it? Why do I have to have, you know, an iPod and my phone? Why don't I just keep using my it's
Because you can't find any.
yeah, or just because I don't want to. I don't want to listen to the same tape the entire bus ride, and like, you know, it's not as convenient. So even when it's not like planned obsolescence, when you have this kind of exponential progress and whatever technological advancement, it just kind of happens too naturally.
No, it's such a sticky, sweaty topic too, because it is. I mean, it really is. It's and I think I get really irritated. I think it's the technology that makes me most irritated. Like looking at how many different laptops we own and how many different storage, like external hard drives. And I when I was in school, we stored everything on these zip disks. And I've got basically my entire, like this whole, like it's called a zip drive, and then these like really thick zip disks. And I have like boxes of zip disks that I'm like, why do I still have these? I don't want to throw them away, but all the work I did in undergrad is on a zip disk.
Whatever that is.
Exactly, and then it's just the same thing goes for CDs, and it's just, and I don't know, I'm so curious as to, I mean, Free Geek is great. I love that place. I always go down there and like buying extra cords and just, but it's, I mean, that's just like a small,
Yeah, no, the
small
technology
thing.
is like, that's
And then to not even talk about how things like, that's not even going into how they're manufactured and who's manufacturing them, and it's just, it's so messy.
and it's like, well, it's just gotten to the point where it's like you can't, it's not something you can boycott in this industry.
Yeah.
You cannot boycott Apple, you cannot boycott Adobe.
Yeah.
And that's, you know.
I mean,
That's one of those things that I think about a lot. It's like, maybe not. Maybe when people take me more seriously than I do right now.
Oh, but that's a hard one. And I think that's one of the things that gives me the most guilt, because I don't feel like that's something that I can feasibly control. I can control like how many sweaters I decide to buy, and I can control, whether or not to have, a TV in my house, or I can control like I can control what I recycle, and I can control, but I don't feel like I have enough self-control over my desire to have, 2 desktop computers and a laptop, which I do. Because it's and I think it's, again, and that's tied to us being designers too. That's tied to the industry that we're in. So,
I mean, yeah, really. One thing that this film made me think about was like trends. And that goes for technology too.
Yeah.
Like how trends develop and how trends can be like really bad sometimes and make people do things that are stupid, like buy a lot like keychains for their iPhones. But it can also become like, I feel like in Portland especially, like it's almost like a trend to be kind of scrappy.
The makeup movement?
Yeah. And like, I don't know if I totally feel that, but like, I was thinking of this film, The Warm Wear film, and I was just like, what if that like just spurned a trend? Like, what, that could be like a good trend. And like, unfortunately, I guess trends die, but I don't know. I was just thinking about them because I always think about them in kind of like a negative light. Like, oh, that's just a trend.
Well, then they'll start selling jackets that are distressed.
And that already happened in like 2004.
Yeah.
I know.
Jason has a problem with the hoverboards.
What
think we all those things.
Those ones.
I have a problem with
I
those
hate
too.
those. Those are just like segways for people who are too scared to ride a segway.
too lazy
They-
to put their arm.
Yes.
The ones that just hover you along the ground.
I think
to your
I feel
destination.
like it's one of the laziest ways to transport yourself. The lazy with the Segway. I mean, I've seen more people on
This
those
segway, you're like, yeah,
just like
awesome.
looking at their phone as they like. It's just they're
like
so like,
falling.
completely still, and
It's such a gizmo.
it is. It's I actually read an article to send it to you because there's not one specific. There's a lot of white labeling that happens with the hoverboards, and when I say white label, it's like one manufacturer makes all of the hoverboards essentially, and then there's these independent companies that have decided that they're going to sell those, and so then each of those independent companies brand themselves in a different way.
It's the same.
It's the same product, and so there's a lot of kind of like these, and it was this article. It was just kind of fascinating talking to all these little like cottage businesses and cottage industries that are springing up around hoverboards, which Jason would like to say that they don't really hover. So
That's all my name's all over them.
My neighbor actually brought his son to the bus stop. They live half a block away on a hoverboard, and I wanted to just smack them.
Just kick him off the hoverboard.
Are they battery operated?
I have no idea. I don't know. Are they better? Max is shaking his head.
They're
Yes, they are.
rechargeable. So
Well, yeah.
we're talking about energy.
But I mean, that's like another
As
trendy
opposed to
thing.
knowing.
Well, I think, I mean, this is a timely thing right now because I feel like when we are in the most hyper consumption time of the year right now, I mean, it's Cyber Monday, everyone. It's Cyber Monday, and we just ended up with Black Friday, and it's so,
Two holidays I choose.
I know. My Black Friday was at someone got a hold of my credit card number and charged $500 with the sporting tickets in a place in Australia. And that I was consciously not purchasing anything. I have actually done that ever since I started my daily drawing project. I don't purchase something on Black Friday. Like I'll unless it's like something where it's like, oh shoot, I just bought like Coke. I forgot about that. Or just something. It's just, but it's like, and then this Friday it's like notification from my credit card company that it's like, oh,
Then Black Friday on you.
yeah, exactly. Was that intentional timing, Nina? What's he talking about? I don't know. Oh, was it intentional that you were having this during?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't intentional. I don't know. I'm talking to my phone.
No. I mean, one of the things that like spurred that wanting to like have this discussion was about branding.
Yeah.
Because they kind of discussed that in the story of stuff, branding, the fat heel, skinny heel thing.
Yeah.
Like convincing people that Adidas and Nike are different.
Yeah.
Which I like convincing people that they need both pairs of shoes, or that they need that new thing, and they don't need a new thing. And that was just like a thing that I had a problem with, was that like I felt like I had to do work. I felt like in design I made the mistake of feeling like I have to do work that convinces people to make trash.
Yeah.
And one thing that I want to show you guys actually is there's a design agency. I don't know if it's familiar with, they're called Free Range. But they are definitely kind of greenwashy, but they're out of Oakland, and they did the branding for the story of stuff.
Oh, funny.
And for all of these other companies, their websites are. But they only work with like environmental companies, which is kind of cool.
Were you here for Citizens Show and Tell? It was the very first one, or Civilization, sorry, for Civilization. You should check them out too, because they very much, the majority of their projects are for nonprofits, for events, for things like that. And I think they're based in Seattle.
Okay.
And I think that they would be, Michael Ellsworth was the guy who came and talked with us, and he's really smart, super nice, and I know that he's gonna be back in Portland again more too, and I feel like he'd be a good person to connect with as well. And I really like what Civilization does too.
Yeah, that would be cool. I would live. There's another O'Brien magazine. I don't know if you've ever read that magazine.
That was the first magazine that ever like published anything about obsessive consumption in 2002. Yeah, that was the first press I ever got. That's so funny.
I love that.
No, they're fantastic.
Yeah, they're really cool. There's always copies hanging around Bitch.
Jason just said he co-signs on Civilization. You should watch TikTok.
Yeah. We're have one more thing I'll show you guys that I think is ridiculous.
Do it.
Does anybody have any final thoughts on this subject right now? Too many apps.
Olivia, Grandma Olivia, too many apps. Why do you think that? Why do you say that? Too many apps.
There's unnecessary stuff, the things that people need.
I don't.
What's the most?
I cannot handle being designer apps to ever make some app where someone's gonna have to do their login and create a new password and create a new username and fill up space on my phone, so then my phone gets full and then I have to buy a new phone. Or use my apps. Like,
We can't use the app anyway.
I want one social media. I say no to Twitter. No Twitter.
I like Twitter. I say no to Facebook.
I think if you
No
find
to Snapchat.
if you find a platform, I think, and this is how I feel about social media. And this is a little bit, but I feel like finding a platform and just kind of running with it and being relentless with that one. And maybe you poke up every once in a while on other ones, but you know, you're like, no, too many apps. What's with all this email?
Go away with it.
Sorry, looking at that.
My really good friend Matt, app developer, he developed an app called Cat Snap, where it's just Snapchat, but it's only for cat pics.
I think that's what Jason uses Instagram for.
Tell
I
me.
met a guy in New York, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're developing an app for people who want to go to a party at someone's house, and they get to the party, they show up, and they're open the door. So what do? You develop this crazy app so that people can go and I didn't have the right to tell them that's a stupid idea, but I was like, oh, it's great." I mean,
This touches upon a whole other conversation series that could be about startup culture, because that is very disturbing and problematic all in itself. And so I feel like that has its own set. I want to highly recommend for everyone to watch Jennifer Daniels' Creative Morning Talk.
I did.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like she's in the belly of the beast with San Francisco and startups and all of that, and I feel like I felt like she was able to really kind of crystallize a lot of at least my feelings that I've been having about that. And so, yeah, you should. It's really good. It's really good. But then that's like, again, I think it's like Jason just said, go grow, which is all grow startups. So, because it's mostly grows.
And a lot of those startups, they get all these kind of big angel investments.
Oh yeah, don't you get venture capitalists? All of that money is seen as disgusting. And again,
and then it goes nowhere.
And it's the same. And again, like it's the same type of mentality that this whole kind of like planned obsolescence is too, where it's about kind of chasing more dollar. And so, but I'm thinking like, go ahead.
Oh. I just watched the Aaron Swartz documentary.
Oh yeah, I have.
And he's interesting because he built a startup. He created Reddit and sold it for $1 million. Went to work for it and was like, I don't care about this, and left because it wasn't like he wasn't changing the world enough. So he just like was like, I don't like startup culture, and just like left. And
there's a recent transplant from Amit Gupta. He moved here from San Francisco. Now he lives in Portland, and he's someone that I want to have come in and talk to. And he started the company Photo Jojo, and he's been like starting companies and selling companies ever since he was 19 years old. And he has just a really interesting backstory. He gave a really big talk at the XOXO Fest this summer. That would be another one to kind of check out and see. Like, again, just about like living a meaningful life when you're kind of working within this economy too, so, or within this like design economy, the startup economy structure.
I'll show you guys this really cool trailer. Have you ever heard of this movie Branded?
Did we watch that in our 225 class?
It's the movie itself is not good, but it's like a Hollywood produced movie. It's about a dystopian future that is based on brands.
Is this like Idiocracy? You've seen that one? That's another movie that you guys should watch. Okay. Well, this is what Idiocracy is too. It's like a really ridiculous.
Okay.
America is falling in love with the burger. Introducing the Super Deluxe Jumbo Juicy Burger. 2.5 pounds of sizzling pure all beef. Try the burger. You'll fall in love.
Gentlemen, we have perfected the code. How far are you willing to go?
We'll do whatever you advise.
if there was a code in your mind that controlled your desires? What if it was implanted, branded there, with the products that you use every day?
I've tried to pretend that everything's okay, but I'm sick of using all of it. Needs to do sense. And that's why that doesn't make sense.
Is it essentially
No, I'm really seeing it.
Horror movie.
Someone set this whole thing up.
See how complete is the first step for the design the consumer science. All functions just one facade.
and never just swallow it?
Jeffrey Tambor. Jeffrey Dahmer's serial killer.
We gotta choose those
Jeffrey Tambor, Jeffrey Dahmer. I didn't read the last
I congratulate you together. We will change the world.
You're in 321, you're like, This looks like it was produced by Adbusters or something like that. I feel like that looks like Adbuster material.
Yeah. Got.
Thank you. Yeah, this was good. I like this. I thought this was fun.
Yeah.
I want more conversation questions.
Okay, we should have more. I'll think of some other topics. I just put free snacks bigger on the poster, I think.
But I do, I think if this is something that we want to do, maybe we figure out like a regular time for it.